every day I played, it was to get to that point to be in America and win that tournament and go to champions. That's what I was striving for the entire year. And that's what our team was striving for the entire year with the roster changes that we made, the adjustments that we made in the game, the role changes, it all was to get to that point and compete at that event and win that event. So when you find out you don't even get to compete there, you didn't even lose off your own merit, you just can't go last minute, literally like 2 days before you're meant to fly, it just kills you. It's so horrible. I don't think any of our teammates, none of my teammates are really that motivated right now to do anything. You've sort of been sitting there reading like why we aren't going, and it's just horrible.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 33 of Geographically Challenged. This was supposed to be quite the exciting episode because we were looking forward to, talking to Tux about how he was going to go over to North America, to the Last Chance qualifier. We were going to, catch up on everything that was happening in Australian Valorant because it's not an area of, Valorant that we've covered. We've mostly been focusing on the Asian side of things so far. But unfortunately, the news that did come out today was that Order and Chiefs no longer are going to attend. So that's something that we are going to inevitably cover. We're going to try and still sort of do the podcast as normal. We're going to go through Tux's history as a player in Counter-Strike, how he sort of transitioned over to Valorant, what he did there, the qualification process, and then at the end, we're going to get into the whole discussion surrounding the fact that they are now no longer going. You will also note we don't have Bleh on today. He's unfortunately unavailable, but that's okay because it really is an ANZ-focused episode anyway, so he probably doesn't have anything relevant to say regardless. The only one thing that I wanted to draw attention to was the graphic above, which was... It was created prior to the news dropping, and he flying all the way to North America to potentially enjoy one best of three. It feels like it's got an even more somber note now that that information has come out about Order and the Chiefs. But anyway, Pilski's back, of course, and we do have Tux, so it's fantastic to chat with you again, Tux. It's been a long time since I at least spoke to you, going back to your CS days, and obviously Pilski, probably has had a little bit more of a time to interview you here and there. But yeah, hopefully we're going to get some good stuff out of you, and hopefully you're going to be able to jump overseas next year. If that opportunity does present itself. But I think to start things off here, maybe we should just go all the way back to when you started playing Counter-Strike and how that all sort of came about. So the way that we actually wanted to frame this, and it's a little bit different to some of the previous ones that we've done, is kind of ask you what you think your top moments in Counter-Strike were, what was the defining moments of your career, and sort of give us some background on your CS career, doing it that way as opposed to just going through every event in a sort of a linear fashion. So I'd love to hear what you think actually are your key defining traits or key defining moments from your Counter-Strike career, and can it be from any point in your career as well, like all the way from 2014 to 2020. So what would you say are actually maybe one of your top two most favorite moments from your Counter-Strike career?
G'day, fellas.
Hi.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about the top defining moments for my career too much, to be honest. Obviously, IM Sydney, the first one is always a big one. I think, being a young dude leading a young team who were all really good friends was a really great thing to be a part of at the first IEM Sydney, and really sort of seeing the Australian crowds and the fans and involving ourselves in that way was just so awesome. And getting the results that we did. And to be honest, I'm not really sure about the second one. I think IM Sydney is probably the only really huge one that stands out. I mean, I'm sure there's probably a few lands that I've won here or there. I think actually maybe it's not just one event or so, but that 2018 Chiefs team with like Texta, Flicks, Mo in Frequent was a really enjoyable team to be a part of. And we won a few events that maybe people didn't think we would win, and I think we were probably a bit better than people thought we were, and we sort of had things going really well for us, and we kind of worked things out in a really nice way amongst that five. So that was really enjoyable to be a part of. But other than that, I don't know. I think a lot of my experience as a player comes not so much from an event point of view, but interacting with fans and getting to meet so many cool and different people from being able to travel around to events. And like, I would say I'm a pretty social guy, and I enjoy meeting people and interacting with people face to face. So that's always been the best thing for me, is going there and interacting with fans and meeting people that I never probably would normally ever meet, and hearing different stories from a bunch of different people. I remember at IEM Sydney in maybe 2019 or 2018, I was doing 1v1s at the Red Bull booth, and there was a guy that I 1v1'd, and like he was waiting in line for a little while, and he came up to me after the 1v1, and he was like, "Oh, Tyler, like I'm a really huge fan. I just want to come and say like how much you've done for me, and like it's really awesome." And then he told me that he had a brain tumor, and that he'd like only had a few months left to live. And he was just like, "I just want to say that you've really done a lot for me as a person, and I've loved following you, and it's really inspiring following you." And I was like, "Holy fuck!" Like just really started crying in front of all these people at this 1v1. And I think that's like, at that time, that moment, it really hit me just like how impactful you can be on other people, just like doing nothing but playing games, and interacting on social media or in person at events. And it really makes you think and makes you appreciate what we have. So yeah, that probably is the biggest part of my career so far, I reckon, for me as a person.
Yeah, that was definitely not one that I was expecting. I think normally when you ask someone that kind of question, they talk about all of their achievements in the game, or maybe they played internationally, whatever, that kind of thing. But I suppose it speaks to you as a character as well, Tux, as to what you're like as a person and what you value and stuff like that. Obviously we had our own opinions as to what we felt your defining moments were, and we sort of wrote a couple of them down. Some of them do actually align with what you spoke to, and obviously from our perspective, it's obviously your achievements in game and what you were able to do, and some of them maybe not even necessarily in game. I know Pilski had a couple, so do you want to maybe start off with yours, Pilski? I think, and then I'll go through mine.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think about like that North upset. I think that's the one that everyone goes back to, where like I remember watching that and seeing Chiefs upset North at IEM Sydney. That's always like a pretty big one. What else? I'm trying to think. You've won some overseas tournaments. I remember you won like an Asian event, and managed to beat some pretty solid teams over there. I think a lot of domestic victories as well. Like with a lot of different squads domestically, you've managed to win. And I think the main thing I always think about when I think Tux is like, me and Jordan and a lot of the other talent, we always like have to sit in the green room, or we sit through like waiting screens for all these ESL events. And I think like you were kind of like the poster boy, where every waiting screen you get Tux cycled in there somewhere, when you're winning an event or something like that, or like, just a fist pump moment and stuff like that. So that's what I always remember when I think of Tux.
For me, it's kind of a little bit different. I think for me, the main image that conjures into my mind when I think of you, Tux, is that really iconic photo of you at IEM Sydney. It all kind of goes back to IEM Sydney, where I think it probably was from that North game. You're cheering, obviously, and you're super pumped and whatever. And that image kind of became almost synonymous with IEM in Australia. I feel like there was a situation in a world where you almost were like the poster boy. Pilski says, I suppose that's a good word. What would I say? Like the face of IEM Sydney in a way, I think is probably a better way of doing it. I don't know if you necessarily feel that way, Tux. I'd love to hear your opinion on that. But for me, it was like, you seemed to be the guy that was put forward on all this marketing material, and you kind of became the face of IEM Sydney. Obviously you were an ANZ player. You'd competed in the first one, and I think you played in 3 over the course. So, you inevitably became someone that really became almost synonymous with the IEM Sydney name. Was that something that you kind of felt like proud of, or was it something that you just sort of thought came hand in hand with competing at these events? Was it not a big deal to you? What did you think about that sort of whole situation, the fact that you were really being pushed as this guy for IEM Sydney?
I never really felt like I was the face of IEM Sydney. I was just there, and I was just enjoying having a good time. I mean, it obviously was cool seeing those photos, and I think that photo was, one of my friends has the photos that he came to IEM Sydney in 2018, but it was that photo on the front of Kudos Bank Arena, which was really cool. But I think it kind of just was like nothing intentional. But in 2017, like I was probably the only one from my team really doing media. Like I'd put my hand up to do all the media when they asked. Yeah. And the rest of my teammates weren't really too keen on doing it at the time. They were much younger than I was.
I do remember that actually, because if you remember, I was doing like interviewing at 2017 for some reason, and that was where that Bushranger Tux picture came from as well. So like, there's all these kinds of things that seem to sort of pop up from you at IEM Sydney 2017 in particular. I felt like that was like a really big point in your career.
Yeah, it was. It was a huge turning point. I think as a player, I think it really inspired like myself and my teammates, and I think a lot of other players, and how easily achievable it was to beat, not easily, but how achievable it was to beat these international teams and show that we are not as good, but we are still very talented, and with the right pieces and putting enough work, you can beat these teams. So I think that was and that's what it felt like the vibe was when I was walking around the arena in 2017. A lot of people would come up and tell me that, it's just amazing watching you guys beat these people. And we always believed it, and I always believed it. So then when you actually do it, it was just a real oh fuck yeah moment. Like we actually can. What we're saying to ourselves we can do. We've just proven it. So I think that was probably a really special moment for me, and it's just a really huge realization that Australian players and teams can beat the best in the world, which obviously 100 Thieves or Extremum did go on to do at some point, or plays pretty highly, and Renegades obviously have done with different iterations. So it's really nice to see.
All right, well, that's actually something that we kind of want to get into a little bit. We've talked about all the great moments that you had in your career, and I guess for maybe people that don't know Tux from Counter-Strike, the way that I'd kind of encapsulate you as a player is someone who was quite dominant within the domestic scene. You were obviously at the top of the ANZ region for probably, 3 or 4 years. You were able to qualify for a lot of tournaments internationally speaking. You were able to win a lot of domestic competitions, and there was a lot of instances where people might have had you in the discussion for the top player in the region over the course of your career in Counter-Strike. However, there is obviously the VAC ban discussion, and this is, I think, where things take a bit more of an unfortunate turn for you as an individual and, for what you might have been able to do in Counter-Strike. And this, I think, is quite an important part of your career in Counter-Strike, but then also it might have potentially influenced your move over to Valorant. That's something that we can talk about as we do go through this one. So we obviously did want to bring up this whole thing. You do have a VAC ban on one of your second accounts or something like that. I don't really know the circumstances, but it doesn't really necessarily matter. The TLDR was that you were basically never going to be able to compete at a major. So for someone that was one of the top players in the region in the domestic sense, I felt like did kind of hamper you in terms of your opportunities to play in some of the top teams. So, we look at you as someone who might be, or might have been, had this not been the case, a player that might have ended up on something like Renegades or Extremum. So what do you think about that? Was that potentially ever on the cards? Like, it's kind of hard to say, right? It's obviously all theoretics, right? But at the end of the day, if that VAC ban was not a concern, would there have been more opportunities for you in Counter-Strike? Do you think you would have gone further when it comes to your Counter-Strike career?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can never, like you said, you can never really say for sure. But I'm fairly certain in like at least that early, maybe 2016, 2017 years, I was definitely one of the best players in the region, like top 3 for sure. And IGLing. I knew I was really capable of leading a team. I also knew I was a really capable player. And I was also really driven as a person. So if I didn't have that VAC ban holding me back, I would have searched for every opportunity to go overseas or to be in a team with the best players. Like if I didn't have that VAC ban and I knew that I could play with the best players and compete at a major, nothing would have stopped me from forming the best team, without a doubt, with all the best players that I wanted to play with. And it ended up, I still got that opportunity here or there. I helped develop some of the best players that I really love playing with. But without the VAC ban, I think, it's just that inherent, that restriction of the best players will not play with you because they want to play in a major. And that's what all it was really.
Yeah, obviously, you were on pretty good terms, I think, with the vast majority of the players in the scene, so it wasn't anything to do with that either. It was literally just this one rather unfortunate roadblock. The other question I actually have for you on this topic is, were you satisfied with what you got from your Counter-Strike career, or was there always that sort of sense of wanting more? Were you happy with what you were able to achieve? You obviously played internationally, you did have really, really good domestic results, but was it good enough to feel like you could compete at the top of ANZCS, but always be held back by the VAC, or was it, just a case of you always were like, yeah, this is good, but I want more?
Yeah, I mean, you always want more, especially when you're competing. You always want to compete against the best, and you're a really hard competitor. I think when I first started, I came back with a VAC ban, and I knew that the best players wouldn't play with me, and I got a lot of hate back then. But my goal was purely just to be the best in Australia, and I was so driven to be better than anyone else in Australia, so that the best players would play with me with a VAC ban, or they just couldn't beat me. And I feel like I did that. And then it kind of just got to the point where it's like, well, I've had a bit of international success. I've tasted it a little bit. I'm playing in a really good team. I want more than that. I want to compete at a major. So it's slowly over time, like I was obviously happy with, being really good in Australia and playing with good players and, earning some money. But over time, it really wears you down. Like it really kills you over a long period of time, constantly seeing good players leave your team and go to other teams, and all the other teams that are your competitors just poaching your players. Like it killed the fuck out of me when Tainted Minds got ins, and then Ali went to Order, and then Liam went to Grayhound. Like it was just, that was the real, that just messes you up. And I'm really happy for those guys, and they've all had such great success, and they're really good dudes. But for me personally, like it just hurts when you know that it doesn't matter if you can get the shittest players and make them so good. Not that they were, but I
was going to say that's a bit of a backhand comment.
I'm saying they were really good, but like in theory, I could get the shittest guy, make him really good. I know that they're just going. So you sort of start losing that start losing that motivation to keep going and keep doing it. And I think by the end of it, like I wasn't as interested. I was really excited to play with Ofnu and Zeus again in Chiefs 2019, but it just didn't work out, and it wasn't what I pictured in my head, and we just didn't get along that well, like the whole team. And you just really, like that drive just stops being there, and what once made me really good was my drive to get better and to compete and be better than anyone else all the time. It just wasn't there anymore, and I was enjoying things outside of the game as well. And I think that all does come back to, well, me aging, but also knowing that I can't compete any higher than what I'm competing at right now.
Yeah, I recall.
That sucks.
I feel as though there was a sort of a defined point where you kind of started to take steps away from Counter-Strike, even before Valorant felt like it was starting to become a thing. Obviously you went on to coach Order and whatnot, and we're going to sort of talk about that as well. But before we jump into that, I do want to talk about maybe one of the positive, I know this is a weird way to spin it, right? But one of the positive aspects of you getting this VAC ban was that you ultimately ended up on a team with Texta, who also had a VAC ban, and now you're obviously teammates and whatever going into Valorant. So that is a partnership that kind of formed maybe by virtue of that circumstance. Maybe you never would have ended up on a team with him were that not the case. So, he's a player that obviously has had a lot of success as well, and we want to talk about his growth and whatnot, but, maybe that's just one thing to sort of take a little bit of a silver lining out of a pretty bad situation. But Pilski, we also did want to sort of touch on this whole coaching thing that Tux did for, what was it, like maybe 9 months or something before you eventually moved away from Counter-Strike. I think I'll let you drive this one, Pilski, to be honest, because you're the guy that seems to know all about coaching and all that jazz. So see what we can dig out here.
Definitely wouldn't say I'm an expert on coaching, but I think it's an interesting sort of angle to go from, in the current like iterations of coaching, we've gone from a point where coaches weren't super relevant like ages ago in CS, and then now they've become like almost every solid team has a coach, and you have like this sort of divide of like people who focus solely on coaching, whether they can no longer actually play CS or they were good in a previous iteration of CS and they only are worried about coaching, versus people who have like gone straight from being an active player to being a coach directly. And I think it's kind of like an interesting thing where I wanted to know like what your opinion on you going straight from actively playing into coaching was, and what you think the positives and negatives were, comparing those two kind of things where some people might go straight from playing into coaching versus some people only focusing on coaching and putting everything into being a coach. But yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts on some of that stuff?
And
how did that come about, by the way?
Me coaching?
Yeah.
I knew that, like, I think it goes back to that same point as I knew that you're trying to keep playing, you're trying to find new players to play with it. that can be good enough to compete at a high level, and you sort of just get drained.
Mm.
And other teams are getting better, and Renegades were obviously getting really good, and I'm just never going to be able to play with better players. So then I decided that like that Chiefs team disbanded. It was a really strange scenario that and then I just decided that I think Matt wanted to quit.
Matt being Flix, right?
Texta, sorry.
Texta.
Oh.
And
Flix quit as well, though, didn't he?
Flix quit the year before.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like, I kind of want to stay around, and I really love coaching. I really enjoy coaching, and I always saw myself being a coach. And I'm really interested in performance development and getting the best out of individuals and helping people. So Order had a good opportunity for me, and I jumped in, and I liked all the guys there, and obviously I was friends with Ali beforehand, and I really loved it. Yeah, I thought it was a really good thing, and I think being a player, obviously I don't think just any player can go from being a player to being a coach. There are people that just I don't think are capable of coaching. I don't think they can have that like personal connection that you need with players.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for my coaching, being a player definitely helped me a lot because you can relate to the players so easily. And you know what they want and what they need, and then being able to connect with them on a personal level is a really good thing. And having the experience that I have over the years of playing with so many different players, I got a lot of experiences of dealing with different people, and that helped me for sure. Because that Order team as well had Rick and Carlo who are older and more experienced, and then had 3 really young dudes in Ali and Valiance and Jara. So that helped me a lot, and I really enjoyed coaching those guys. And I think going back to that point of people just focusing on coaching, obviously you don't have to be a player to be a really good coach, as shown in traditional sports as well. But you still need to have a lot of the skills that potential players have as well, and personal skills. And obviously you have to have a real hunger for the game and a hunger for, when you're coaching, you have to have a hunger for, developing people and helping people compared to just competing as a player. A player, you can be so much more selfish than you can as a coach.
Yep.
So maybe, honestly, I don't know. I don't really have too many thoughts on that whole thing. I think both can be really good. You can just be a dedicated coach your whole life and be really fucking good at that. Or you can be a player and then go into coaching and be really fucking good at that. You might bring 2 different things, but you could still be really good at coaching.
Do you feel like you were doing like a lot of the same things when you were a player? You're talking about like playing with other players and playing with various rosters and bringing various players up while you're like actively competing. Do you feel like you were trying to do some of those same things when you were coaching in Order, or do you feel like you went a sort of a different way with it?
I think my mentality was different. I think when you're coaching, it's like, well, you're coaching the whole team, and to be honest, the players to me, they mattered, but if we got a new player, I don't think it would have affected me as much as if I was playing, because I know that I could have a bigger impression, and I could help a new player so much more as a coach than I could as a player, because I see that person all the time. I'm coaching that person all the time. I see exactly what they're doing all the time. I see how they're communicating in the best way. And I just have more time to help them and dedicate, instead of playing and dedicating a lot of my time to getting better as an individual, I'm as a coach, I'm dedicating that time to helping someone else get better.
Yep.
So I wasn't too concerned about the roster when I was coaching and having new players, if that's kind of what you meant. Because I was really confident in helping and develop any team that I had or any players that I had.
Cool. Jordan, I noticed that we went past the overturn in terms of that. Are we going to skip through that, or
what's the overturn?
The overturn of the
back. Yeah. Oh, I accidentally. Yeah.
I think I actually asked. I can't remember whether it was you or whether it was Texta when that happened, because you were playing actively like a Valorant competition, and I think you won your game and you had to do your like 500th winners interview because you guys kept winning. And I think I might have asked you about that, but what were your thoughts on that when it happened? And obviously by that point, I think it was like kind of common consensus that you guys had already made a pretty like big commitment into playing Valorant. You'd already been playing for several months. You've already, you're representing a pretty big organization. You already got a pretty solid team together and you're doing well for yourself. So what was the feeling like of that being the timing of it happening?
Yeah, I mean, that's all it is. The timing sucked, but
Hmm.
I mean, I actually really like playing Valorant. I really love playing Valorant now. I think there's so much to it, and I know Matt's the same. But yeah, I don't think at this point we were considering ever swapping. Like, I don't really think it crossed our minds. Like, we sort of said when we first went into Valorant that if we did get unbanned, we would stay in Valorant because we believe that the game has so much to it and it will grow so much. And it obviously has a really good developer in regards to esports and how they run their esports and how they run their game in regards to updates. And they have a really great track record with League of Legends. So I don't think we were ever thinking about swapping back.
Would
but
there
it's kind
ever
of
be
nice
a
to
right
always
offer?
have-
Like, you know, if was there, like, maybe you're not considering it, but if the perfect offer comes,
What's the offer?
I'm just wondering,
Alright.
would it be
I'm gonna do a
possible?
hypothetical.
No,
Yeah,
I don't. I'm
what's
not
the
even going to come with a
perfect
hypothetical. Oh well, okay. If you want one, maybe it's like Renegades or Extremum, or like, let's even say some team in Europe. For some fucking weird reason, why they chose Tux from Valorant, I don't know. But let's say you could join fucking.
The
I
way he
don't know.
plays Viper, man, that's
Yeah,
fucking
like-
crazy.
we can
Get him
say
on
this
the
man
team.
anchor. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe. I obviously love Counter-Strike as a game. It is a really great fucking game, and I'm not sure as a player. Like, there was a period where I was really when I was coaching, I was like, fuck, man, I really miss playing, and I was playing Counter-Strike so much. I was playing Counter-Strike when I was coaching way more than I played in 2019 when I was competing. I was like, this is crazy. I would have been so good last year if I was just playing this. I was like, I'm for sure one of the best players in the region right now, just as a coach.
You did sub a couple times, didn't you? Though, like, I feel like I remember you playing a couple of games on Order and not doing too badly.
Yeah, I think I subbed one of the final games. I think that I was even coaching against some shitty team, Rooster or something. I think I subbed against them, and then I played some ESCA games. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun. And I think also at the same time, like, that Order team, I really loved. I thought they were a really great bunch of dudes, and they got along with each other really well, and they were really good. And I think that inspired me. It's like something that I've been missing for the past few years in Counter-Strike when I was playing, like just having that real great team camaraderie. And that inspires me and motivates me probably. And that's something I've learned, that, you know, having a really good team environment is what motivates me more than anything else. So I think probably that as well inspired me to just start playing Counter-Strike as much as I did. But so a little bit off topic. But yeah, maybe if I got the right offer, I don't know. I really enjoy Valorant. If someone from Valorant could match that offer, I'd probably stay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure.
All right. Well, I think that's probably a good way to sort of categorize it, I suppose. Like you said, if someone in Valorant could match that offer, you'd probably stay. And as far as I'm concerned, that kind of gives us your thoughts on that whole situation. That maybe it is possible, but Valorant might be the one to sort of continue the career on for Tux. But let's put to bed the Counter-Strike discussions for now. I think we've sort of obviously talked about everything that we wanted to there. You know, your earlier career as a player, moving into coach, and now we get to the point where you start to move into Valorant. And I think there was a little bit of a crossover period where you were still coaching Order, but you had started to play Valorant a little bit. You know, not anything like super seriously. I think Team Launch was starting to become a thing. But what was the sort of official move like for you? Were you done with Order, or was there like a contract expiring for Order, or in Counter-Strike, I'm saying, and then moving into Valorant, you had sort of just decided, you know, maybe it's time for a fresh start? How did that sort of all come together for you?
I think, well, we kind of knew about Valorant, obviously, coming out, like everyone did. That there was a Riot FPS coming, and I'd spoken to Matt about it a couple of times, and we were kind of always maybe on the same page. You know, if we liked the game, we would get into the game and play the game. And then Valorant came out, and I was playing it a little bit. I enjoyed it. At the same time, I was coaching Order for a bit, but also at the same time, Order came to us and to Matt and I. Well, Nath came to us, and
yeah, I was going to say, when you say Order, who actually was it? Because I feel like there's a few more important people in Order when it comes to Counter-Strike that it might be worth mentioning.
Yeah, well, we had Nath come to us, who I love so much, and he's such a good dude, and he's a really hard worker. He came to us and had the idea that, you know, it'd be a good idea for Order to get into Valorant, basically as soon as possible. And he already had me contracted as a coach, and knew that I was friends with Matt. So, I mean, it's probably the best idea to get Matt and I on a team and create a Valorant team. But then it kind of, the tournaments came out and Order pretty much, I wasn't really coaching when I was playing Valorant. I was pretty much playing Valorant, and Order just let me do that because they thought that I would probably sign our team there, and if we couldn't come to an agreement, they would pretty much just let me go in a really nice way. They were very easy with it. They kind of allowed me to chase my dreams, really, because I won't be competing against Order, Counter-Strike and Valorant, so it didn't really matter too much to them. So yeah, we were just playing team launch, and I wasn't really coaching. I was just the coach, really, the contracted coach. But I was just competing for team launch, and we were just playing random tournaments and practicing a bit.
Okay, so can we talk a little bit about team launch here, Pilski? And maybe you're going to need to help me out because I wasn't really paying much attention to the early days of Oceanic Valorant, if I'm being honest. But from what it looked like to me, it was kind of just a situation where you had got a lot of people that had more or less retired from Counter-Strike or moved on from Counter-Strike. It was yourself, Texta. If I'm remembering correctly, Ferg, Wizard, and Dick Stacey might have been the initial team. So It was, obviously Ferg has a VAC ban as well. So there's that discussion. Wizard had obviously moved on from Counter-Strike a while ago for various reasons. And then Dick Stacey had moved on from Counter-Strike in terms of he had moved out of the Renegades roster and he didn't seem to sort of pick up another team there. So this seemed like a good opportunity, Pilski, for a lot of these players who we knew were really, really good in Counter-Strike. Perhaps some of even the best players in the region in Counter-Strike that just hadn't really got that opportunity to go any further to now move into a new title and sort of run away with things. So what actually, Pilski, was your opinion on this team when it first sort of got put together? Did you look at that and say, okay, this screams number one Valorant team in the region, or did you think there was maybe some issues there? Did you think that they were going to be a good team or a bad team, or what were your thoughts overall about team launch?
I mean, I think the only downside to the team, if there was one even, was you had some people who had already gone through the majority of their career in Counter-Strike in a number of years. So you think about things like, is this person going to be sticking around in this team for a long time? But outside of that, I mean, you always evaluate teams based on, who you're comparing them to, their direct competition. So if you looked at the experience on that roster and the individuals that they had compared to, the other teams that were around in early Oceanic Valorant, they, in my opinion, should have been a clear number one. And should have been the best. The only question was, obviously, like I said before, it's a new game and you got a bunch of guys who have played, competitive games for many, many years. So how many hours are they going to be grinding on that game? Like if you got some older guys like Ferg, for example, who, he's played on a couple of Valorant teams. Some guys might not put in as many hours at that age, but Ferg is obviously the exception because I've seen that man grind ranked and he just goes crazy when he's all in on a game. Like he would just play nonstop. I've seen his match history. It's actually fucking absurd. Like he plays more than the supers. So I think, they look like a strong team on paper. They got, really, really good experience across the board. And in comparison to the rest of the competition, I thought that it should have kind of just been a pushover in a lot of tournaments, but there was actually some pretty close maps, and then obviously you had this EXO core that was doing okay for themselves as well, which is kind of the opposite, where there's a lot of players who didn't have as much experience outside of a couple. So, what were your thoughts on that launch team, Tux, and also what were your thoughts on the earlier couple of tournaments in Oceanic Valorant at when was that? Was that the end of 2020? Yeah, end of 2020.
Maybe like October or somewhere.
Yeah, there was 4 tournaments, right? Where it was Rise of Valor, Mex Invitational, First Strike, and Order Cup.
Yeah. Team launch, I think, to be honest, it was completely on Matt. So the team started with Matt and I, that's what we knew it was. And then Trav, a Wizard, was playing with us a bit in Valorant, and we were obviously interested in getting him. We wanted to get Counter-Strike players because we knew that reliably they would be good at Valorant anyway. And we didn't know too much about the game apart from that, it's very similar to Counter-Strike in aim and shoot.
Yep.
So we wanted Trav, and then I think I kind of just went AWOL. I just wasn't really around, I don't think, and I was kind of off doing things, just seeing my friends and whatnot, and Matt would be like, all right, we're going to pick up Ferg, and I was like, okay. And then Matt was like, all right. Oh, no, actually, I think it was Dick. He was playing with Dick, and him and Dick are good friends. And they were just playing for fun. And Ollie was like, oh, yeah, I might come play see what it's like while I'm doing uni and whatnot. So then Matt was like, all right, we're getting Dick. And I was like, okay. And then we needed a fifth. So he's like, oh, look, Ferg's been playing the game so much. We might as well just get Ferg as the fifth and we'll play. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And, these were all people that we knew and we were friends with anyway. So at least we're going to have a good time while we're playing. And at least we knew these people as individuals and we had good fun for a little bit. And, that first tournament we played, like when we started playing them, we were just so much better than everyone else. And I barely played the game, but my teammates played it a bit, but just from Counter-Strike fundamentals, we were just so much better than everyone. So we played that tournament, and yeah, I think we didn't lose a map maybe. The Order tournament, we just annihilated everyone. We destroyed EXO in the grand final. And then the next tournament, the Rise of Valor, I think EXO came back and they were much better than they were when we first played them. They improved a lot, which I got to give them a lot of credit for. Every time we beat them, they came back the next time and they were much better. They'd obviously theory crafted something, and just as individuals, they're a lot better, and as a team, they're a lot better, and they make some nice adjustments to their composition in game. So I had a lot of respect for those guys and how they approached a match against us and how they picked themselves up after getting beaten. It was a nice rivalry, actually, to be honest. I did enjoy playing against those guys. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like when I look at their roster, it's almost kind of like the opposite of what you guys had going, where you had a lot of Counter-Strike guys with a ton of experience who played a ton of competition, whereas like some of the guys on that roster were a bit like that. Like Dizzy had played CS for a long time, and Iron had played CS for quite a long time. But some of the other guys, for example, like Plix or Crunchy, like these guys had played a lot of different games at like a pretty decent level. So I almost felt like maybe they had some like adaptability, or they could pick things up, or they wanted to grind like a little bit. So I thought it was always interesting in that regard. I mean, I know a lot of that stuff doesn't always sort of transition into the server in that certain way, but yeah, it was definitely interesting how tournament to tournament the matchup would kind of change around a little bit. And obviously that was like the first kind of top two teams or main rivalry in Valorant, and then obviously towards the end of the year, you guys changed up your roster quite a bit, where you went from having this like roster full of experienced players to picking up some like, well, I don't know what to call them, like Zoomers or like Pug Superstars or whatever into your squad. So how did that kind of come about?
Wizard had to quit for personal reasons, and we replaced Ferg. We just wanted to get someone other players that could just be a bit better than him. He's a great dude and he puts a lot of effort into the game, but we just wanted younger guys. And we really wanted Autumn, and because he was competing. Cam and Kale were both Autumn and Disco both competing in Ground Zero at the time. And Autumn was dominating, and he was really good. He was like statistically the best player in the region, I think. And we really liked him, and he put up a lot of good results against us and good numbers against us. And then when we asked him, we didn't really have like a other player that we had in mind. So we were like, well, we just get Disco too, because he was playing Smokes at the time. We needed a Smokes player, so he came on board. And at the start it was pretty good, but our roles didn't change. So Autumn played the Sentinel role, and Disco played the Smokes. I was still on the Jet and on the AWP, and I think we won that first tournament. And then at the end of the year, we decided to swap it up. But yeah, I know that I really love working with newer guys and inexperienced guys who can be molded and have good personalities, and you can really build a nice team with them, where you actually all grow together because you're also growing with them as much as they're growing with you. And I really love that, instead of just getting a bunch of experienced dudes that think they know how to run the team anyway, and are real stuck in their ways and don't really develop outside of much of what they think. So yeah, playing with those guys initially was really fun. It was really exciting for me playing with two new guys. When I think about to Counter-Strike, I couldn't really do that much anymore. Like I couldn't go and find the best young player to play with. Maybe I could sometimes, but mostly they'd already be on the other team, so they wouldn't want to play with me because I wanted to play at a major. So it was really exciting being able to go out and find, get the players that we really wanted. Out of everyone in the region, we wanted those guys and we got them. And that was exciting, and it was really enjoyable. It is really enjoyable playing with them.
All right, well, there was one more roster change that we wanted to talk about. Obviously, Dick Stacey leaving and moving to coach. I think we talked directly to that aspect initially. So obviously, you have some experience doing that exact transition from player to coach. What was it like for Dick Stacey, or do you really know what it was like for him? What did he kind of do for the team, and how did that all sort of come apart? Because obviously Dick Stacey was a pretty big part of your team. Now he probably, I assume, is still, but in a different way. So how did he move and transition from being a player to coach, and why did that all sort of go down?
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy for him, and I think it went down because he wanted that. He didn't really want to keep playing anymore. In Valorant, especially compared to CS, you have to commit a lot of hours. You have to play the game a lot because the game's always changing, and you're playing different agents. There are different mechanical things that you have to get really exceptionally good at on an agent. You're not just playing the same game, throwing the same nades every single round. You have to be playing and adapting so much, and that's something that I went through as well. Like I had to really start playing the game so much more. Or else you just fall off to these guys that are just playing the game 10 hours a day. But he didn't really want to commit as much time to that as to individual practice, and he wanted to sort of take a step back and move into the coaching role, and just be around there and be around the team and help us develop. And to be honest, we picked up Maple this year and we've had a really good run. But that role of Dick going to the coach is massive for us. It's probably the most influential roster change we've made. Because just having a 6-man there, being able to look over things and speak to everyone, because he's a really, he's a really good person to person. He knows how to interact with people really well. He knows how to talk to people. He can give criticism and he can give really good feedback. And he can encourage the boys. And he's got a level head. So it's really important for us having him there, I think, right now. And that was a really huge roster change. But I think he transitioned really easily. He's got a good personality, and he's interested in sports and whatnot, and he's interested in helping people develop.
Is he still coaching? I know obviously he just got a new job, so is that affecting anything?
No, he's still coaching.
Okay.
He just maybe some hours during the day we have to start a bit later, or start without him, but he's still coaching, and he wasn't going to come to America with us. Right. Because he wasn't able to because of the job with Monster. But he was still obviously going to come on and help us practice and stuff on whatever time he could. And discuss everything with us still. And it would have been really nice having him there. It would have been nice going actually, but it is what it is. But yeah, he's still coaching and yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, the other side of that roster change, obviously Dick moves out, someone else has to move in. In this case, it was Signed that came into the roster, and I actually know Signed a little bit from Overwatch. So what he was in Overwatch was this superstar player, this young up-and-comer, like this crazy, like he was nuts. Everyone thought he was one of the best players in the region. And I think it sort of made sense, right, to see him move into this Order roster in Valorant. You put 2 and 2 together, you say, okay, well, you got some of the best CS players in the region, and you maybe bring in one of the best Overwatch players in the region as well, and theoretically that should be a match made in heaven. Now, we know ultimately that he moved on from the team, and that didn't end up being the case for a very long-term prospect at all. So what were your kind of thoughts bringing Signed in? And obviously then we can talk about him moving out and Maple jumping in and sort of how the team now actually ends up looking. But yeah, what did you guys see in Signed, and what did you at least maybe hope for from Signed bringing him into your team?
We were kind of on a bit of a time limit, I think, in regards to trialing. So we actually trialed Signed and Maple at the same time. Well, not in the same scrims, but a couple
for the
nights.
same spot.
Yeah. And Signed for us, just in the trials, we enjoyed him. He obviously had good aim. He seemed quite composed. And also we were trialing specifically for that Sova role, basically. And he was a Sova main for a long time, and his utility was a bit better than JJ or Maple's. Yep. And we liked that. So we didn't have much time, so we kind of just went with Dale. And obviously I still think he's a decent player, and he has really nice aim. His aim is quite good, and he clutched up a lot of rounds for us. But I just think personality-wise, he probably didn't really just fit with the team. But yeah, I mean, I still enjoyed playing with him. And I think he's a really good bloke, and he's actually a really good teammate. So I hope he succeeds.
I'm sure he will. He's obviously had that tenacity to do so in Overwatch, Pilski. But then they brought in Maple, right? And this was a little bit of Was it kind of a situation of a round peg in a square hole? A bit of a role
I mean
clash?
that's what I thought at least, or that's kind of what the thought was for a lot of players, because you had Maple who was playing on like this demon squad, and then also playing in I can't remember who he was standing in for. Was it like BTS or something like that?
Yeah.
And he was playing a lot of duelist roles, and obviously he was performing quite well statistically, but that seeing him go into Order didn't feel like it was a role for role fit. But it, from the sounds of it, I mean, was it as simple as he just fit better in the team personality wise, and you guys were happy to give him extra time to touch up on whatever he needed to do in terms of the role, or was there a bit more to it than that?
I think there's a bit of everything. I think when we first started trialing him, he was just really open to, like when I first started speaking to him, when I was also speaking to Signed at the same time, he was just really open to everything, what roles he wanted to play. He played the game a fuckload anyway, so he was playing ranked all the time. So you'd go to his match history and you'd see him playing Sova constantly, obviously trying to get better at Sova for our trials. And then we decided to go with Signed, and JJ was completely fine with that. He's like, all good. I hope it's all good. And then still over the next like month or two, you still see him like really trying to improve at the server and getting really good at the server. So he had a lot of hours on that server and ranked at least. He just didn't play it competitively. And then we bring him back again and we start playing with him again, and his server is a lot better. But yeah, just as a person and his personality and how he can communicate and just kind of be really open and really hardworking. It really fit with the team. And when you see that in someone, you know that they're going to be really good at a role because they're playing the game all the time. You know that he'll be able to sit down and work out Sova as much as he can, and also be a really big part of our communication and just talking to people in the team and making the team environment a much better place just with his personality. And he was just so hungry. Like he just wanted to play the game all the time, still does. He's so driven, and that can inspire you and your teammates. And you just know when you get people like that, you kind of want to keep them around because they can get really good at anything they try because they're so driven.
Fair enough. And I guess there is a little bit of a transition there into maybe talking about Texta, who is someone that you have kept around. You and Texta have been together for a very long time, obviously still going back to the Counter-Strike days. And I think this is where we start to maybe talk a little bit more about the more recent history of Valorant in 2021 and how that whole qualification process went and that kind of thing. But I want to sort of actually touch on Texta to begin with, because when I remember him in Counter-Strike, again, I sort of look at him as like this up-and-comer. He's a very aggressive rifler. He's like a star of his team. He likes to make plays. He's really that guy that's like winning 1-on-3 clutches and doing whatever the fuck he wants, right? He was that kind of guy to me. Just really individually skilled and mechanically sound, and basically just brilliant in terms of the game itself. But it seems like, again, his role has shifted a little bit as he's come into Valorant. Now he's obviously in-game leading, and that's, I think, a big change for someone like him. So what has it been like from your perspective playing with Texta from those early days, when he was even quite a young guy, to now where he's at here in a position to potentially lead one of the top teams in Valorant in ANZ?
I think his progression has been completely natural, and from the inside playing with him the whole time, you saw that this kind of transition would take place. Like when I first started playing with him, I was really surprised because I thought he was what everyone thought he is, and still maybe is. They think he still is now, like that really aggressive, selfish fragger, just that pure fragger. But he was never like that. He was someone that was always willing to do whatever it took for the team to win. So if you put him in any role, he would have done it. And that's what we used to do. So when I was calling with him, I would put him in roles, and I would change a few of the roles, but he was so open to doing anything as long as you won. The only time he disagreed with doing certain things is if, you tried it and it failed, and then he wanted to change it. Obviously he'd give it a good shot, but I always thought he was really open, and he was a really team orientated player, in the sense that he cared so much about winning that he would do whatever the team needs for us to win. He wasn't as selfish as maybe I'm not sure if people think he's selfish, but like there is just this aura that he was like this sole young fragger that couldn't really do much else apart from
I think it's just
people.
I think it's just a what is it? A stereotype almost, right? You see a young guy come in, they start hitting shots and they start clutching out crazy rounds, and people are like, he's that guy, So maybe that's where it comes from.
I mean,
That's
I
really
even like remember Texta in like before he even went on that many big teams, like if he was on like a Greeny Bankers or like a Dark Sided or something in CS, as like the guy in Pugs who in Cash A main would like peek over the smoke like 3 times and just keep killing people and never fucking stop. And I think in general, like you know, he's got a little bit of smack talk to him, and he's young and he's individually skilled as well, or at least back then he did a little bit. So I think that's kind of where that stereotype comes from in a way, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that for sure. I think he's actually, I did think that 2 years ago, that he was a lot different in a team environment than he was in a pugging environment. And I thought he was always a really good teammate to have, because he would push the team to be better as well. He had a really strong winning mentality, but he would also do whatever it took to win, and you can only respect that. But yeah, so I think this like sort of transition to going towards an IGL was almost quite natural, because he always wanted to have a big say in what the teams did, even in Counter-Strike. He always wanted to, you know, have his opinion, and did feel very strongly about his opinions. So to me, it only made sense for him to IGL as well, or at least grow into that IGLing thing. I always thought he could IGL, but it's more the leadership qualities that he lacked as a kid that he needed to develop, and he needed to develop sort of the person-to-person relationships and being able to interact with a bunch of different people, not just the people that he was friends with online at the time. But yeah, I think it made sense, and he's doing a really good job now. He's growing a lot as a person, which I think is really important as a leader and as an IGL, and he puts in a lot of time into the game. So he has a lot of knowledge in Valorant. And yeah, he's very intelligent at the game, and he's becoming a lot better as a leader. And it's all working out for him, and it's working out for us because of that.
Yeah, I think he also sort of has like this individual edge as well, where it's like, you know, some IGLs who they might play like super team based, or, you know, everyone has their own style. But I really feel like Texta at the moment has like a pretty unique style where he's not afraid to make mid-round pushes, or he's not afraid to be aggressive, and he still does put a higher fragging output that somebody else might put on that role. And part of that comes from his background of what he's done in the past, but also it almost gives like a individual edge to the way that you guys play as a team, but also to him as a player, to what you wouldn't see other people who play that role traditionally really do, in terms of either fragging output or just in terms of the way that the team plays as a whole, like strategically, but also, you know, how someone might play individually on that role. So I think that's kind of cool. And I'm really keen to see how he keeps playing that way, you know, because I think earlier in Valorant he wasn't always on that smokes role, was he? You were talking about Disco being on that. So yeah, he's kind of changed up his role in the game as well as in the team, which is interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was more of that flex role. I mean, mainly just the Sage.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I just remembered that I remember him running around on Sage and then also on Breach, like flashing through walls and just peeking people and stuff. Okay, it's coming back to me now.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think now is maybe a good time to actually start getting into some of the overall team discussion and the results and whatever. And what I want to do here is I kind of want to put stage 1 and stage 2 together, because I feel like there is, just looking back at your results, right? If I was to look at the year as a whole and just look at it on paper, Order kind of just wins everything. It looks pretty easy from a on paper perspective. But if you really go a little bit deeper into some of these results, in stage 1 you were pushed a little bit, I felt like, by Mindfreak in the final, and at Nova Invitational as well. And then obviously in stage 2 you guys go down in the finals 3-0 to wildcard. So I guess the question around this was, is it for Order 2021 as easy breezy as it looks like on paper, or was there like this little bit of a bumpy period through the middle of the year where some of the results might have been a little bit closer than you guys would have liked?
Yeah, I think there was a bumpy period. There was for sure a period kind of at the start of the year where honestly we probably just weren't doing as well as we would have liked, and I think at an individual level, we probably weren't getting along with each other as much as we would have liked. And then I started IGLing, and to be honest, I just wasn't that good at it. It's like I just don't really think about the game from an IGL's perspective as much anymore. Or maybe a little bit now, but back then I just wasn't as focused on it as you really need to. And I wasn't learning as much about the game as I should have been. And that was in that stage 2 area when we lost to Wildcard. So yeah, I think I made a lot of bad calls in that series, and obviously we didn't play as good individually. And then after that, Matt took over IGLing, and then I think, we and Dick also went to coaching at that time. Oh no, Dick was coaching a bit before then, but we really started drilling down on a lot of the individual things we were doing and trying to become better as individuals. And Matt's calling was also getting really good at that time as well, and he had a really clear idea of how he wanted to play the game and how he wanted to play certain maps, which was really important. And then we started getting really good from then. So I would agree. I mean, the stage 1, I think we lost to Kanga one time in some shit best of 3.
Oh yeah, but I don't think I even put that in the notes. I think the main thing that I was looking at from that was like there was some series like best of 5 series where I think I can't remember if I'm misremembering it, but I remember one best of 5 series versus Mind Freak where they might have been up, and I could have sworn they should have won that game, and then you guys like came back in the last 2 maps or something like that. And yeah, that's where I was kind of thinking, I'm looking, it's easy to look at the results on paper, but I as long as I'm not misremembering it, I think, it's also good to like look back on some of the tournaments and be like, well, maybe you could have lost this one, even though you ended up winning it, or vice versa,
Yeah, I think that Mind Freak won. They won the first 2 maps, and it was the best of 5, but we had a 1 map advantage. So they won the first 2, and then we just won the next 2, and then we won the series from having the map advantage. But yeah, they had a couple good series against us, but I think from our perspective, we never felt pressured this whole year. We didn't feel like another team was going to beat us consistently, and we didn't really feel the pressure from any other team. Even Wildcard, when they were playing well, we still didn't feel like they were. I mean, maybe this is what everyone thinks when you're the best team, but we didn't feel like these teams were getting close to us or were going to beat us consistently. We still knew we were the best at the time, and that they would have to do something really exceptional to beat us consistently in all the big events, and at least beat us, 2 tournaments in a row. Like, it's very hard to do that. I'm not even sure if actually EXO might have done that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm just really I'm a little bit disappointed, actually. We didn't go as in deep into that launch versus EXO rivalry as we intended to. But anyway, that's in the past. So I guess we'll just move on towards stage 3, where you guys obviously won that one. That wasn't a massive deal, I don't think. It was more so expected than anything else. And we didn't really want to talk too much about stage 3. But once you come to championship, where you obviously got these qualification spots on the line, and now again in hindsight, we know that these aren't going to be relevant because you guys aren't going overseas anyway. But I think it's worth talking about because some of the results in there were a little bit interesting as well. So the first question I actually have for you was, who did you think was actually going to qualify? What were the Scrimbucks telling you? Was there a little bit of a surprise there, the fact that Peace actually ended up coming second?
No, because I think Peace came second in stage 3. And I think Wronski in a competitive setting can just be a beast. In that team, he's just enabled so well. It seems like he just does whatever the fuck he wants, and he just does it. And he gets away with it. But I didn't really think any other team would probably beat Peace. Maybe Wildcard if they played well. They do have decent individuals on their team. And they should be a bit better than they are, I think. So
I saw they completely role swapped like a whole ton in that tournament, where they changed almost every single role on like a very tight time frame, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I think that was really stupid. I think from our perspective, our confidence levels were like, they just swapped all these roles and they don't have much time to practice them. Like, that's so dumb. And I think they actually are known to do that a bit as well. I think they've swapped roles a bunch before. It's like every time they lose, they're swapping role. Like, someone's back on this role or someone's going on this role.
I mean, and it wasn't just that team. Like, there was other teams where they were doing this kind of stuff as well. I think Mind Freak was another team where sometimes from tournament to tournament, I would see them swap a role, or on certain maps, I would see them completely role swap and things like that. So yeah, I don't know why that would be, but maybe like not being happy with certain results, but into a really important tournament in the year, like for wildcard, even like seeing the Ninum change. I mean, I don't know what the reasons were behind that, or even just seeing them completely swap roles when they've shown that they can be top 2 in the region, I thought was was interesting, and even some of the other teams where they might have role swapped and then it hasn't gone well for them afterwards towards regionals. But I just take a look at the notes there. Yeah, so you were quite confident that Peace was going to be the team that went through. I mean, they obviously did end up going that way, and they performed quite well for themselves, and they're the team that's come through. So even in practice and stuff like that, were they performing really well, or was it just like some of these official results that filled you with confidence that they were going to be able to do it?
I think it's just the official results. Like we scrim all the teams, but I mean we didn't actually scrim wildcard. So we had no idea what wildcard were like going into it. But just from officials, we thought Peace would probably be the best team. And when we play scrims, like they can get really out of hand. You play really fast rounds. Teams are trying new comps. The games don't go for as long, or maybe people get burnt out from how long the games go. Like playing max rounds. I feel like sometimes in scrims we would just annihilate teams. Like 20-4 or whatever, and you just don't even think about it. You're just playing. But when you get onto a competition game, it's like we still know they're better than all these guys. But I guess when we compared them, how we view every other team right now is that they can all just beat each other. I think Peace now slightly coming up out of the pack and have now placed second twice. But we still viewed it at that point that anyone could really take home that second spot.
All right.
Just depends on who performs on the day.
Well, moving on then from the game-related discussion, the team-related discussion, whatever. I mean, this might be a little bit of a loaded question, but I want to get your thoughts on the 2021 Valorant Oceania Tour as a whole. How it was run, what the format was like. What did you think? Because I know there has been a little bit of discussion, I suppose, surrounding Oceanic Valorant in 2021, and obviously even back in 2020. People are still sort of thinking, like, what's going on? So how do you feel Valorant is progressing in Oceania at the moment?
I mean, look, for what we have, I think it's still progressing pretty well. We didn't really get much support. I don't know, man. I enjoyed the fact that the tournaments were like planned out and structured. We had a roadmap for the tournaments. We knew when we were playing and what the tournaments were and what they meant. I just didn't enjoy that we played a stage 1, and I didn't enjoy that stage 1 was the exact same as stage 3. It just there was no difference in the stages. There was the same prize money, the same points. The thing is, we literally won stage 1, and we would have qualified for Oceanic Championship, so we didn't play stage 2 or stage 3. Like that's freaking crazy to me. How does that happen? And we wouldn't have even been last seed.
Yeah,
that's what's insane. And I think LPL, they put in some, they put in the work. They're trying to do good things for the community, and they're trying to build their own sort of tournament team, their organization, I guess, as a tournament organizer in our region. But I think for an organization, for Valorant to really grow, it kind of has to be with a bigger organization or people that have a better plan and sort of a better product to deliver to the audience. I felt when I was watching the LPL broadcasts, it was very similar. The same thing. It was the same thing on stage 3 compared to stage 1. It didn't seem like it was very different. And obviously having no international paths either just puts a burner on like the whole thing. It's not as interesting watching teams just play for $4,000 in cash every couple months. Like I want to see I want the stakes to be higher where teams are going overseas if they win, and then getting to go overseas and compete against international teams and coming back and showing that. So it was kind of a boring year, to be honest. But it's only growing, and it's still only the second year.
Was obviously competing in Counter-Strike for such a long time, that's something that I've heard a couple of times from like different CS players, is that in CS it's a little bit of a question mark as to what the hell is going to crop up in the next amount of time. It's not usually as transparent. So that's one thing that I've heard a lot to like Riot's credit in terms of organizing and giving something for people to look towards. But in comparison to CS, was there something that you liked more when you were competing in CS, like that you would look forward to, like a certain format, or did you like the time frames better where you would have a certain league structure into something, or did you like having some of these small qualifiers where it's just a double elimination bracket for a spot to a tournament and whatnot. In comparison to when you competed in CS, what were some of the things that you liked better there, if there were any?
Yeah, the thing I liked about CS was the whole thing. Like, it was so different. There were always different tournaments going on. Obviously, like it can be quite saturated, and my criticism as a player is that you never really got a break, and that you can never see into the future, so you never know if you could take a weekend off or go on for a week holiday or something, because you always pretty much had to be ready that a tournament was going to pop up next week. But the really great thing about CS was that every tournament that there was, a lot of the formats were different. We had leagues, like we had ESL ANZ and we had ESEA. Then we had different ESL international tournaments, and people had the minors and the majors, and they were all different formats in themselves. And a lot of them, we were blessed, and CS was blessed at that point. We were getting a lot of international opportunities. So every tournament in some way felt like it really meant something. So even as a player, it's not like, I'm not just playing against Renegades for the 100th time for $1,000. It's like I'm playing to go overseas, and that's so huge. And it was just much smoother. And obviously, there's so much more experience running. ESL have been around for a long time now, and they've had a lot of experience running tournaments. And we used to get a lot of international tournaments, so like DreamHack, and then the minors and majors and stuff were running. So you had people that were really experienced in running tournaments, but they were only running their own one-off tournament. And that, I don't know, that whole thing was exciting to me. You never got bored of that as a player. You kind of maybe just got bored of like playing ESEA Premier round robin for
it's still going
against some random team that's probably
now
going
we're
to
doing
forfeit.
it for longer. VO3s, let's go. He swapped it around. Fucking hell.
All right. Well, then, in an ideal world, what do you think are, like, I don't know, let's say maybe two things that if they came out in 2022 and said, this is what's going to happen for Oceania, what are the two things that Tux really wants out of it? It could be like maybe different tournament operator or exterior tournaments. It doesn't necessarily all need to be just one Riot pathway, or international slots, or different pathways for Oceanic teams, more structure, better infrastructure, whatever. What do you think are probably the most important things for you as a player coming into 2022 for the Oceanic region in Valorant?
So I should also just say that we did get it a little bit in Valorant with the Order tournament and the ESL AOC tournament. Those, again, were really exciting because they had different prizes, and they were smaller, condensed tournaments with different organizers and different production and different streams.
And there was a Chiefs one in 20 as well.
Yeah, and the Chiefs one last year as well. And that prize is absolutely unbelievable from the Chiefs. You'll get like 5K PCs and like prize money at the same time. That was the best prize I've ever won. But yeah, I think for me personally, I really love knowing when we're playing. Honestly, the only thing that I would really love to see is just international pathways at the end of each stage.
Okay, but then to get into that, by the way, like what would be the ideal international pathway, right? Because right now you have to go to North America, compete in the North America last chance qualifier to then qualify. So would you prefer direct spots from AU into something like the Asia tournaments, or where would you like to go in that direction?
Yeah, ideal world, we get a direct spot straight to the Masters and then straight to Champions. And I think that's the real shitty thing about not going to LCQ is I am so sure we would have proven that we deserve a spot at a Masters event. Like top 4, I reckon I would have easily thought we would have placed there, and I was really confident we were going to win that whole thing in LCQ. So that is really disappointing, and that would have been a really good boost for our region, being able to show that an Oceanic team can come there and win that event or place highly. And if not a direct spot, then I think going to Southeast Asia just makes sense. For some reason, Riot have paired us with NA, and I think maybe because of League of Legends, or they think that like Australia is just a part of America or something. I don't know.
We're all paid actors, mate.
Yeah, I honestly don't know why they think we should be a part of NA. I do appreciate them willing to send us over there, even though we haven't been able to go now, and still kind of giving us a pathway. But I think for us, Southeast Asia or anywhere in Asia just makes so much more sense than us flying to America. It's basically half the time, the same time zone. We can pretty much play on the Singapore servers. Like Mabel plays on the Singapore servers all the time. If we didn't want to go to Southeast Asia, we should at least go to Perth and play there. That just makes so much sense. So even going to a Southeast Asia qualifier and playing against the Asian teams, and then going to a Masters event would be really awesome. I think just like any kind of international reward for winning nationally, because it's kind of just your motivation just dies off. You win, you rinse, repeat. But you're
Well,
not
it's
going
funny,
anywhere.
right?
You're not...
Have you seen the how the Asian structure works? Like, have you kept a super close eye on that, or not really?
They just all they're just having their
They have
Asia last
like
week
the
qualified.
individual countries that qualify into the whole Asia like championship, you know, like they have their VCT, Malaysia, Singapore, and then they have one for Vietnam,
Indonesia,
or they have
Vietnam,
one for whatever.
Philippines, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so I almost feel like you could even have like an Oz tournament into that, and it even makes sense in the structure that they already have there. Like that could be one way to do it.
Yeah, and you would really think that that's what they would do, because it just makes so much sense. It's so easy. It is so easy to do that. So I hope that is what happens next year.
Right.
And obviously, a few one-off tournaments here and there for whatever reason, and
Keep things interesting.
yeah, I mean, I really hope LANs come back. Like that's what I was missing this year. You know, just and 2020, just LANs, dude. Give me some LANs in Melbourne, please, or somewhere. Give me some of that shit.
I'm not sure that's
injected
just
into my veins.
just a Valorant problem. I've actually been to one LAN this year, by the way, and funnily enough, it was for World of Tanks. So get fucked, everybody else. You know, like
Move to tanks now.
listen, if World of Tanks can do it, I'm sure Riot and fucking Ubisoft and whatever for Rainbow Six can do it, but apparently not. So there you go. But hopefully for 2022, you know, vaccination, all that, blah blah blah. That's not a topic that we necessarily want to get into. However, it is relevant to our next topic, and this is obviously the big one for today as we start to wind down the show. You guys were basically poised to go over to North America. You told us that you were leaving on Wednesday. I think the reason that you wanted to record today was that you were getting a COVID test so that you could go overseas, and you had to isolate anyway. So you had nothing better to do today. So obviously, as of at least what it was like maybe an hour and a half ago for us, for Pilski and I being outside of this, that was when the news dropped for us. And we found out an hour and a half ago that basically you were not going to go over to North America. I messaged Pilski. I said, hey, have you got Tux's Discord? He said, no. And then I was like, all right, can you ask him for it? He asked you for it. And then he comes back to me and says, oh, Tux is going to be 30 minutes. I was like, what the fuck, man? This guy, we organized for 2 o'clock. And then Pili drops it on me and he says, yeah, they said they're not going to North America anymore. I was like, oh, okay, I guess fair enough under the circumstances that he needs a little bit of time here. So, yeah, give me a bit of a TLDR as to sort of how you guys found out about this, how this sort of all came about as far as you guys are concerned. Has it been difficult, the whole process trying to get overseas? Was this kind of like a little bit expected, or was this kind of out of the blue and a big surprise for you?
Look, I think you kind of have to say it's like a little bit expected, because just from Australia, it's kind of hard to get overseas and to get back, especially from America. But we won 3 weeks ago, and you know, we were really sure that someone at Riot would have, you know, been really diligent in what they were doing and knew everything about getting us over there, and that kind of all would have been pre-planned. So we weren't too concerned about it, and then sort of we're not really hearing much, and then we kind of just get told today at 11. Like things were just sort of going back and forth. Like we are going. We might.
What
not
did
be
you think
going
last
yet.
night? Last night when you went to bed, what did you think was happening?
Last night I thought we were going, but later on in the week, I thought our flights might have been moved to maybe Thursday or Friday. So I thought that was going to happen, but there was still obviously, you know, we were still aware to the possibility that it might not happen. But yeah, it was kind of just I've never really felt like this as a player. It was a real lot of like up and down roller coaster of, you know, we are going, okay, we might not be going, or we are going this time. And then sort of having to think about getting COVID tests, and then having to quarantine once you get the test, but still having to organize things to do. It was really stressful, to be honest. And then just not being in a constant line of communication. Like obviously Gomez was doing that with us, but for me, sometimes I can be a bit of a control freak, and I want to know what's going on. I want to be a part of those conversations. And when you're not, and you don't hear things about what's actually going on, it kind of gets me a little bit. But yeah, you know, Matt Texta was like pretty much ready to fly today from Canberra to Sydney. And
well, funnily
it was
enough, on that topic, you know, we already have a player that has travelled already from Tasmania to Sydney, Wronski. He found out when he landed in Sydney that he wasn't going to North America. So he flew from Tasmania to Sydney today. So luckily, at least for you, you weren't stuck in that kind of a situation, but that is incredibly shit, in my opinion. The fact that he's gotten onto a plane, he's pretty much wasted a whole day because now presumably he has to fly back to Tasmania. And I can imagine that flight's probably, 2-3 hours, probably more than that to get to Sydney. So there's your whole day gone. And the fact that now you've got this news that you're not going to go play overseas, which is just fucking shit to begin with. So, shit day for him. Feels bad, but what can you really do?
Yeah, that is a really shit day for him. I can't imagine just the feeling of like being in the airport, opening your phone and being like, well, what the fuck do I do now? Like, then you have to also try and organize getting home, getting a hotel to stay there the night or whatever. Yeah, that really sucks. And Texta was like kind of similar. Like, he was pretty much ready to fly. He wasn't at the airport or anything, but he was waiting to get the go ahead to fly or not. Disco took a train to Sydney today as well, I think. So people were moving and we were getting ready to go. And then Gomez just typed in our Discord that like we're not going. Well, I got my message from Matt, like Texas saying we aren't going. And that's the worst thing that you could ever read, It's we aren't going. And that's
exactly what it's referring to as well.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as it pops up, you see the message, you go, okay.
Yeah, your heart just drops and everyone, you just become so disappointed that we play all year and you get really excited. Everything that you work for as an individual, literally every day I played, it was to get to that point to be in America and win that tournament and go to champions. That's what I was striving for the entire year. And that's what our team was striving for the entire year with the roster changes that we made, the adjustments that we made in the game, the role changes, it all was to get to that point and compete at that event and win that event. So when you find out you don't even get to compete there, you didn't even lose off your own merit, you just can't go last minute, literally like 2 days before you're meant to fly, it just kills you. It's so horrible. I don't think any of our teammates, none of my teammates are really that motivated right now to do anything. You've sort of been sitting there reading like why we aren't going, and it's just horrible. Especially because it's like, we might get another opportunity. I don't know, I really hope somehow Riot are like, well, because you couldn't go here, we might give you an opportunity to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
maybe the Masters next year, or even somehow qualify for champions through something. I don't know, but the fact that we don't have anything else after this as well is what kills it. Maybe in CS, if you lost a tournament or you didn't qualify for an international event, there's going to be another one coming. You've got this one planned as well. Look forward to that. But we've got nothing. We're literally now just waiting until next year, and we don't even know what the format's going to be next year. We don't know if we're going to get any international spots unless maybe we get this exact same format next year again. So we're waiting a whole year to get just back to this point.
So essentially you've played for 9-10 months of the year.
Qualifiers
upon qualifiers.
I'm going to go look at what the start date for stage 1 was.
To go to a qualifier.
Yeah.
To then not actually be able to go to that qualifier. So it's really unfortunate. I mean, I feel so bad for you guys, and obviously I'm not even like super into Valorant, so like it doesn't like hit me as hard as it would if it was maybe a Counter-Strike team or a League of Legends team or whatever that may be. But I just want to see Oceanic teams.
It's like
being
February
able to compete
this
overseas. So 8 months. Let's say 8 months. You guys have been competing to make this qualifier, and obviously that hasn't happened.
Yeah,
I don't really know what to say about it, to be honest.
Yeah, the thing that just kills you is that from our perspective and from my perspective, I love playing in this team, and I think we're so good. I think we are a really good team, and we've worked on ourselves so much to get to the point where we feel like we can win at an international level. So not even being able to show that is what hurts. Because it could do so much for the region at the same time, us going there and competing and putting on good results.
Well, I think that's the big thing about it as well. Like, it's not even like, obviously for you guys and for Chiefs as teams, it really sucks. But I think for the region, a lot of people might have been looking at this, and it's the same for. I'll take this from the League of Legends perspective, right? Because it's the same kind of ecosystem, right? It's Riot, where if your region performs well internationally, you get more eyes on you, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get more support from Riot, but at least people are going to start to care. People are going to maybe watch a bit of Oceanic stuff. We know people from overseas watch Oceanic Counter-Strike because Renegades and Extreme, they perform reasonably well. No one gives a fuck about Asia in Counter-Strike because Asia always goes over and is a clusterfuck every time they play internationally. But when teams from smaller regions perform well, people start to watch those smaller regions a little bit more. And so I think for me, that's probably one of the big losses out of this whole situation. Again, not outside of your own loss, not being able to go and attend and whatever. But I don't know really if there's any much more to say about it, to be honest, Pilski, unless you have some more 2 cents to throw in here.
No, I don't really think so. And yeah, I think, even the format of the LCQ was like, I would have like in ideal to see like double elim, and I think
Yeah.
like the seeding as well, like even seeing like a really heavily stacked upper bracket was kind of crazy. So look, there's like so many things that I think need to be like reviewed and revisited, and then hopefully into next year things get improved a fair bit, because yeah, I think like it's almost like it's been multiple waves of really, really scuffed news in a row, and it's just cascading downwards. We're in a downward spiral now where I feel like we're almost at the bottom.
Yeah, really close to cracking it. It is a really sad news.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just disappointing. I've never really felt like this, to be honest, as a player. Very unfortunate.
Well, that might be a good note to end the topic on, to end the whole show on. To be honest, I don't really have anything more for this one. We could keep going in circles about this whole situation. We did actually want to talk about the format. I guess very quickly, my 2 cents was that to me it seems pretty ludicrous to invite 2 teams from Oceania to go all the way to North America to potentially only play one best of 3. Like, I kind of understand. Yeah, you're gonna have them. Like, you're going to have some sort of qualification system, and if it ends up being Oceania going to play in North America, fine. I kind of get that in a way. Like, whatever. Minor region has to compete at a bigger region to go further and further. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think there are better ways to do it, but I can kind of understand that. But to invest all of the money that would have been invested, obviously it's not anymore, to send 2 teams from Australia to North America to play one best of 3, it just seems like a massive waste of money to me. Like, I don't know how much your flights would have cost right now, Tux, how much your hotels would have cost, whatever. But it could be upwards of $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And what if that money is instead just invested in a pathway in Oceania, instead of flights for 10 guys and, a couple of coaches or whatever to go over to North America? I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Tux. If not, we can close the show here.
No, I mean, like, it was really expensive to send 2 teams, I think. I think 2 teams is pretty optimistic. I mean, it would have been really good for Chiefs as well to go there and get that international opportunity. But yeah, well, it would have been a lot of money. And I think as well, another reason is that we wouldn't have been able to get return flights home until 15th of November. So we would have had to been put up in America for maybe a month and a bit, just there. So yeah,
and then you would have to quarantine on the way back, right? As well, like 2 weeks in Australia and hotel as well.
Yeah, probably.
So that's an extra, probably $3,000 or $4,000 per person to stay in, because there are only like specific hotels or something like that, I think, that you're allowed to stay in, and they're all the fucking expensive ones, of course.
Yeah, they're nice ones.
Yeah, doesn't sound like ideal circumstances, but I guess like with the year wrapping up, and I mean, at least in some parts, we're getting more vaxxers and all that kind of stuff, so hopefully you can get better tournament structure and better situation with COVID and everything next year, and have a better sort of ideal circumstances. I guess that's the only like light at the end of the tunnel.
Yep, indeed.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll just see you guys this time next year, and
we'll do another one of these.
America. Yeah.
All right.
Well, a bit of grey in your beard, maybe at that point.
I'm sure there's already some starting to come through after the last couple of weeks. But anyway, I think we'll wrap it up there. If there's anything else you want to say, any shout outs you want to make or whatever, Tux, now's the time. If you've got anything.
Yeah, just shout out to Order. They've supported us a lot the past year in a growing game, and they've invested a lot into us, which we really appreciate, and we're glad that we can get the wins for them, and also to all the people that are following Valorant and following us. We really appreciate your support, of course, and shout out to you guys for putting on this really cool podcast. And Renegades, I hope, do really well in Sweden in the major.
Yeah, we do too.
Whenever that is.
Pretty soon, I think. I think
this month, I think.
Not to rub it in a little bit, but I think they are actually flying out this week to Sweden.
Yeah,
so.
I know. That's also what cut me as well. I was like, these motherfuckers just qualified. They find out next week. Okay.
Yeah.
We qualified 3 weeks ago. All right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's probably where we will close the show. Thank you very much for watching. Pilski, obviously, great on the show again. Thanks for coming. Unfortunately, Bleh wasn't able to make it, but I'm sure he'll be back for the next episode. If you'd like to support us, patreon.com/elfishguy is where you can throw us some beer money for when we do inevitably end up meeting again. We've been saying that for 2 years, so it hasn't happened, but that's hopefully where we'll use it all on. Of course, you can like and subscribe. That would be very much appreciated, and share it all over the place as well. So, look, hopefully things get better for Oceania in Valorant next year, but for now, it's goodbye.